Memorable one-liner tips from mentor to apprentice within the funeral business. So about a year ago, someone posted and asked a collective group of funeral directors, embalmers, and morticians to share their memorable one-liners with the next up-and-coming generation. A funeral director named Meyer, Jim, had a really boring Saturday one day and thought, you know what, I'm going to gather that data, because it's data at that point, and put it together and see if there's a common thread amongst all of those posts. So over 500 comments and shared items later, here is the article that Jim has put together called Answering Life's Most Persistent Questions. In doing so, I was very pleased and gratified to find that nearly all of the tips were respectful, encouraging, and helpful, he says. Most of the tips seem to fit into a few themes. Here are my personal observations. The greatest group, again, assorted by me, was 55 tips about funeral home cars and their use. About half of the tips regarded the removal vehicle and its use, including make sure before going on a removal that the cot is in the van. Yeah, it happens that it gets forgotten. And listen for the cot's click. So a removal cot will click when it is in place. But if you get moving too fast, you don't hear the click, bam, it collapses. He says, also verify the correct body, check for tags, and be mindful for signs of life. The other half of the car tips are for the coach. Most importantly, make sure that the church truck is in the coach and a casket key, check and permit, and the casket, and maybe even an extra veterans flag. Also, know the directions to the cemetery. Don't let the coach door close when you're cleaning the casket compartment, and for both the removal car and the coach, keep the gas tank full. Seem like simple tips so far, right? But these are good things to put in your mind because they're simple items to miss, but they can turn a good funeral upside down in a moment. Next, he says 37 responses were grouped into treat human remains and families with respect. And another 37 tips were great embalming tips. The respect tips are fairly philosophic, such as the remains you're working on now is the most important. And you may have 20 deaths today, but the family has one death in 20 years. Closer to one-liners are under promise, over deliver. And it's a calling, not a job. The embalming comments were fairly direct. Always wear gloves, clean out the nose, clean table, clean body, and some encouragement. Raising vessels, you know it's there. Take a breath, stretch your hands, and start over again. And when embalming, the clock doesn't exist. Now that references the embalmers who think that they're super awesome if they can embalm in like 20, 30 minutes. You're not. A combination of respect and embalming. Never use the body as a table. Sometimes people lay instruments on the person when they're on the table or other items as if they are the deceased as a table. So always good to remember. Next, he says, excellence seemed to be the theme for 33 comments, including be your best no matter what else is happening. Choose words carefully. Think, then act. Check, check, and recheck. Funerals don't allow do-overs. And new to Jim, semper gumby, always flexible. I've never heard that either. Some crossovers with embalming and excellence are never accept good enough. And if you think about it, raise it. Continuing education and humility from the School of Experience and Hard Knocks was the subject of 25 comments. Ask questions. We will never always know everything. We're always learning. Listen more and talk less. Mow the yard. That kind of just tells us to be humble enough to do everything around the funeral home, that we're not like up on some kind of pedestal. And teamwork. Licensees need part-timers and secretaries. Piggybacking that, praise the help in front of others. A good comment goes a long way. Somehow I labeled 24 tips, honesty and integrity, separate from excellence, but it includes, if you make a mistake, don't lie, correct the problem, don't panic. Do the right thing when no one is looking. Accurate ETAs begin good communication. And never answer no, but I'll get that information for you. These are all good tips so far, right? They're pretty applicable to a lot of different jobs, but these are so good. Next, he says, don't procrastinate, was mentioned 21 times, with a reminder that you might have 10 calls tomorrow, and test the mic before the funeral. That's a big one. And then by my interpretation, the themes dropped to comments repeated fewer than 10 times, with the next most common being 5 reminders to use the facilities whenever you have a moment, 4 reminders to make notes, and 4 reminders to don't run or talk too loud. 3 tips, which might have been added to excellence or integrity, stated that you start with your reputation and a new suit, and you can always get a new suit. That one's deep, right? And 3 suggested keeping a change of clothes and shoes in the car. Then there are many great single entries, including not 9 to 5. If you walk out of your shoe, keep going. Don't fall in the grave. And no one ever died from lack of sleep. Finally, probably everyone who has worked for a month in a funeral home has heard the most common single one-liner at nearly 10%. Drumroll, please. Skin heals and casket corners don't. Boom. Mic drop. So that means when you're moving caskets around, your knuckles can hit the door jambs. Skin grows back, but gouging out a casket is not acceptable. So thank you to Jim for allowing me to share this little social study that he has done from some responses from funeral directors. These are all advice from mentors to apprentices going into the funeral business, but it's also good reminders for people who've been in the business for a while. We all get in routines and maybe aren't doing our best because we're getting in ruts. So it's good to be reminded of things we can do to do our best. Bye, guys.